over the last couple of years, Total has become a oft-used name in the Danish North Sea, and of course a major player in the oil and gas industry here. And we're delighted to have the regional director for Total, Mike Burrell, here with us. Mike is here to share Total lessons, his lessons, and to share some ideas around safety, safety leadership, etc. So please, a warm welcome to the stage for Mike Burrell. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And good afternoon, everybody. I was supposed to be the ending of the morning. I'm now the start of the afternoon. But the important part of that is to say I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you today, to be one of the major sponsors of this fabulous gathering that I'm discovering for the first time. I wasn't able to make it last year. Alan, you said that Total's been talked about in the North Sea, the Danish part of the North Sea, for the past couple of years. It's now just over a year since we completed the acquisition of Maersk Oil. And we're well into what I would call the full integration of our teams. And that's the safety part of it is a key part of that. We have a little saying inside the new Total, as we call it, and it's our friend Bob. Bob is the best of both. And Bob is what we're trying to achieve with this integration, such that Total can learn, and the Maersk heritage teams that we integrate into Total can also learn, and collectively we can continue on this journey that I'm going to talk about in a moment of Total and how it's done its safety. But there's an extra element to all of this that I'd like also to spend a few moments on. It's rather difficult, actually, to follow on from the first session this morning with Charlie's very emotional and actually very insightful talk about his own personal experience. You can look at me, I don't clearly have the same experiences, but I do have a few. And also to talk about Piper Alpha. And I would just go back a few years. I've been with Total since 1985. I'm a chemical engineer by training. During my chemical engineering time at Cambridge, we spent some time looking at process safety. One of the examples we used was the Bhopal disaster in 1984. It was part of the dissertation we all had to work on in our final year at university. It was the 2nd, 3rd of December in 1984, probably the world's worst industrial disaster, exposure to methyl isocyanate. There were nearly 4,000 fatalities, and 500,000 people were affected and injured by it. And it came down to poor maintenance, poor attitude to safety, undertrained workforces, lack of procedures, no management focus. We looked at it, we studied it as a bunch of engineers, we knew exactly what went wrong, and we went out into the world thinking, we know these things, we can understand industrial safety. The second awakening for me was starting in the oil industry. One of the first things that we did in 1985 when I started was to send all young graduates on firefighting and survival training. The one thing I remember from that is I don't ever want to be exposed to fires, and I don't ever want to have to try and climb into life rafts and be recovered from the sea. We need to avoid that. But being young, being what I considered very well educated, understanding process safety, I knew what I was up to. I was a young process engineer offshore. And then my eyes were really opened, and I rather liked the demonstration of the theatre we had this morning around Piper Alpha. I was working on the Allwind platform just north of there, about 100 kilometers north. We were connected to Piper Alpha via the gas pipeline systems. And on the 6th of July, I was preparing to go home for my 2 weeks off. The 7th of July, we had crew change day. And as we went to bed, some news was starting to come through about a problem. When you get up on crew change day, you don't have much on your mind apart from getting on the helicopter and getting home. And it all actually came to fruition for us when we arrived on shore. And we saw the disaster that had unfolded. And that's the real eye-opener about process safety for young safety engineers and young engineers. We had an incident offshore 2 weeks later, where we had a gas release. I'll talk about process safety events later. We were well in excess of the level 1 process safety event, right from the riser underneath the platform. And you can imagine how much that affects you going forward when you're talking about safety. There's one other event, but I'll perhaps come back to that a little later. This next chart, or the first one that I'm going to talk about, we're rather proud of. It doesn't go back as far as I was just talking about. It only looks over the past decade, and it looks at Total's own performance. Now, I know full well that this is talking about total recordable injury rates, the number of injuries per million man-hours. These are the statistics, and this is the way we often follow these things, but it tends to miss the point a little bit. I think the one on the right-hand side doesn't miss the point at all. It's about fatalities. Nobody in our organization should be going home injured, and absolutely nobody should be losing their life working for us. And when we talk about Total, we had a World Safety Day last week. I've met a number of the CEOs of the contractors we had here today. It's lovely to be in Esbjerg to connect back to the front line where safety is key for us. And we talk about this. In our World Safety Day last week, I'm not proud of the fact we've had 3 fatalities in Total this year, none in exploration and production, but 3 fatalities too many, all falling from height. 2 of them from height, just at the height of this height here, 1.5 to 2 meters height. This is not acceptable for us. We can achieve better. What's not shown here, although you can see it on the 2016 numbers, we managed 2.5 years in exploration and production with no fatalities. We were really proud of that. We've had 2 in exploration and production since then, and that's 2 too many. And we need to continue to improve on this. And the way to do it, and I'll get through how we've achieved this and how we've got to it, is all around the people. It's all about the people. But when you start to talk about the people, you have to look at a little bit of the history here. I like the talk a moment ago because it actually brings out much of what we've gone through and where we've got ourselves to. And I think we've got ourselves into at least on the management side, an alignment between leadership and what leadership wants and actually our performance and where we're trying to get to. But you can see here in the 90s, very much influenced by Piper Alpha. All about processes, all about procedures, all about good engineering. And once that's done, well then, the guys are just going to operate it and it'll be fine. It doesn't work like that. And I think Charlie's demonstration was very clear that it doesn't work like that. And you can see in the 2000s, we start to realize that. We're talking then about golden rules. What should we be expecting our teams to look for and to do, and where are their dangers? And we're also starting to talk about learning as an organization. We're talking about hypos, high potential incidents, and how you learn from those. And then you get, in fact, if I went back a slide, you'd see we plateaued out a little bit from the year 2010 to 2015. What happened then? Our organization realized that, in fact, if you want to really perform, you have to touch behaviors. And you don't touch behaviors by standing on stage here as the management saying, I need you to behave better. It just doesn't work like that. And so what happened in 2014 to change us again? We had a fatality in Total. Those of you in the oil and gas industry will probably remember Mr. Christophe de Margerie with the mustache. He lost his life in an accident in Russia when the private jet he was on crashed, coming back from a meeting he'd had with the Prime Minister. I should actually have been on the plane with him. It was the first time he'd been to Russia for the previous 5 years when I wasn't with him. We'd stayed to do an HR review in Paris that day. That's the next thing that starts to touch you in a career, to say, we need to be really serious about this. Safety then suddenly becomes not a priority for Total, and not the top priority, it becomes a core value. And that's the change we made in 2015. We reorganized as well, to pick up on some of the points from a moment ago. We reorganized our structures to have HSE, Health, Safety, Environment, reporting at the top level. It no longer reports directly into the business units. It's separate, it's independent, it provides the check, it sets the rules, and sets us where we're going. But we made safety a core value, and the first of the core values for Total. And it's really important to us. And you know what? I had this come up yesterday in a town hall meeting in the UK around our core values. We have 5 core values, but I'm going to talk about one today, safety. And actually, you know what? If you don't believe the things we say, and you don't want to wear your PPE, and you don't want to follow our processes, well, actually, you're not really welcome in our organization. And that goes for us, and it goes for our contractors, because they're part of our team too. And we can't achieve it without them. And so that's what you've got towards the end of the chart here. I'll talk a little bit about what happens next in a moment. But then it's all about, because it's a core value, it's about behaviors. So we've simplified our golden rules. It's all about, just be simple, guys. What can you do and what can't you do? And when you can't do it, it's not acceptable to do it. And if you do it, you're not welcome in our organization. And if you see somebody doing it, we have a very simple process. I have a stop card signed by my boss. Everybody in Total, there's a number in this room, you've probably all got your Total cards, and they're probably all signed by that gentleman sitting there. Everybody has the ability to stop work. And it's again those messages we were talking about a minute ago. It's a very simple process. We stop, we discuss, we work out what's going on, we take action, we restart, and we report. It's dead easy. It's all about behaviors and mindsets and attitudes. There are clearly 2 sorts of safety we talk about, and we deal with both. I showed you some charts right on the very first one. We talked about recordable injuries, occupational safety. The things that keep us awake, and I'll come back to this a bit later on, is actually the major risks. The photo on here, just for interest's sake, is the Bombay High accident in 2005, which is an interesting one to look at. But what are we doing with major risks? What we're doing is looking at here the severity of the consequences, a little bit about what was played out at the end of the Piper Alpha discussion we were talking about. If they knew and it was so severe, why did they not do anything about it? And then you look at the likelihood of occurrence. And I want to drive everything away from the red and towards the green. And that's the way I can manage process safety as we go forward. In Total, we put in place a unique system. We designed it ourselves, we developed it ourselves. It being Total, it's super complicated. And therefore, we've tried, when we rolled it out to the rest of the group, to simplify it. And that's one of the areas, in fact, where merging and integrating with Maersk can help us further. We can actually simplify even further. It's all about a process system to manage exactly what we want from people and how to do it around occupational safety, around the environment, and around the major risks. We plan what we want to do. We then do it. We check we've done it properly, and then we improve. And that's a loop that we just continually try to build on so that we can, through the Maestro system, do better. But as an industry, we don't always do better. And so what you've got here is some diagrams as to what has happened in our industry, and the ones that are outlined in red are, in fact, the Total ones. And you can see that Total has had a number of major incidents over time. And you've got written across the bottom what Christophe Demargy responded to one of the questions, what Patrick Pouyanné responded to one of the questions when he was asked about, what's the only thing as a CEO that keeps you awake at night? It's actually industrial safety. And it's industrial safety because of the fatalities, but also the risks to the organization. And when we talk about alignment, and the last speaker in the interviews, Mr. Hopkins, when he was talking about alignment, you've got a perfect alignment there between business needs and safety. Look at the chart on the right-hand side. That's Macondo, and that's BP's share price following the event. $60 billion of value was taken off BP through this one event, and a number of individuals lost their lives. We have a good meeting of safety and business performance. Why have we put safety as the core value for the Total? And it comes back to excellence in operations and safety because of 3 effects. Firstly, we care about our people. We don't do anything without our people. Clearly, we care about our installations as well. Without those, we're not going to get anywhere as a business. Secondly, to achieve that excellence in operations, you need really good leadership. And you need really good leadership if you're going to achieve anything in this organization and in this business. And so it's vital to us that we get both of those done. And the last point in that is the safest installations are also the best run installations. So boy, it makes good business sense. And when we talked a moment ago about alignment, all of our senior executives and all of our incentive programs include safety performance in them such that we get that alignment between the different elements of what we're up to. And safety being a core value means we don't talk about priorities. There's not a prioritization of production or project execution against safety. If you can't do it safely, you don't do it in our organization. The challenge our teams have is to do everything safely, which is why I love your slogan at the start, Martin. Let me just remember exactly what it was so I don't get it wrong. Better, leaner, cheaper, and safer. You can do all these things, and I've got a super example of that when we get to the end of the presentation. But this is a full court press for us. It's not just about the end result in operations. You have to take it right from the first design. So even when we're looking at exploration activities, when you go through from exploration into conceptual design, into construction, into commissioning, into operations, into late life, we look at industrial risks throughout the whole process. And we monitor performance, and we test performance, and we drive performance. The other good lesson here that you'll see across the bottom is when management focuses on stuff, organizations tend to deliver on it. So we focus here on two things. One, first of all, we've got the design right. So we've done the hardware part. We've done all the processes, we've done all the procedures. We know what that is. The last part is the behaviors. So let's start to measure our performance on that. We measure two process safety performances. The first one being process safety events. They're releases of hydrocarbons. They're the sort of thing that lead to the disasters we talked about. Uncontrolled release of hydrocarbons, energy coming out that if it finds an ignition source can cause the sorts of disasters. And you've seen where we've gone. 2015, 63, 2018, 23, more than halved. We want to drive it down even further. I can't see why we can't have a target zero, as you're talking about here. Task Force Zero, to target zero for our hydrocarbon releases and process safety events. And the second point on it is, don't forget that matrix, that if it does happen, how can I reduce the impact of it, is to make sure our emergency systems that we have fully properly designed and we have the procedures in place to make them work, that they are operational. And so we've moved from 90% testing on an annual basis to 99%. So we test them, and if they don't work, we fix them. And we know they do work. And therefore, you can start to sleep a little bit more easily. But we only sleep a little bit more easily knowing where those risks are. So on a biannual basis, at my level in the organization, and it's the same for each of the regional directors, we don't have any differences in the North Sea or in Africa or in the Middle East or in South America. This is identical in each one of our subsidiaries. We look at asset integrity. We do a technological risk assessment which takes into account scenario planning, exactly what was being talked about at the end of the Piper Alpha play that we had a few moments ago, and we look at different scenarios of disasters. And we say, how can we deal with those? And we look at them being related to people, related to our installations, and related to the environment. We have a discussion on occasions with the regulators why we do the asset part and the environment part, because they're just interested in the people part. We go further than that. We do more than that. And then we look at asset by asset and map them on this matrix to see where they are. And again, you can see how management focus can drive us down in terms of the statistics. I know exactly where all of the red ones are in my area at any one time. And we do a review at the CEO's level on an annual basis of exactly this. And he wants to know where they are, and what I'm doing about them. And I have a special line in my budget and my long-term plan to make sure I have a plan to address each one of these. And if there's any in the red, what am I doing to get them down into the orange and then in the green? So that was the industrial safety part. What are we then doing on the occupational safety? And I'll come back now to the behaviors. Golden rules. We have 12 golden rules. I really struggle to remember 12 things, particularly in the right order. But we actually then designed a little way of trying to remember them. I'm not going to do it for you today because I can see my Total colleagues will be rather embarrassed to see me standing up here doing one. One was all about risk situations, I remember. 2, yes, that's all about driving and safety when we're moving around our installations. There's one of those for each of our golden rules. And we've simplified them. There used to be a bunch of golden rules written by engineers for engineers. How can we expect our operators on site or our scaffolders or the people doing the painting to understand a lot of technical documentations? It's now dead simple. Do this, don't do this. It's a simple way of applying the golden rules. I talked already about the stop cards, and we have our last bit, which is about behaviors. Because safety, and we heard it from Charlie, you heard it from Piper Alpha, and you heard it from our expert a few minutes ago. Safety is for everyone. But where does it start? Safety starts with me. And safety is for me, it's you, and it's for all of us. And that's the behavior that we're after. Safety for me, for you, and for all of us. And that's the last part that I'm talking about here. Where do we go with this, and how do we continue to improve? One of the suggestions I'll throw out there is we still need to be even simpler. Why as an industry have we not got a single set of golden rules or life-saving rules, whatever you want to call them, I don't care what they are. Why don't we have a single set? I've got 2 examples here, one on the left-hand side of the slide that talks about just the different symbols for isolating power systems when you work on them. 8 different symbols, all for the same thing, that you'll see all around work sites everywhere. Client golden rules. This is a site where I visited in Qatar a couple of years ago, last year. And there were 4 sets of golden rules for the employees to look at when they came into the site. You'll see ours are there, bottom right-hand side, those are the Total ones. You'll see actually the IOGP ones in there as well, but they were the previous set. And you've got 2 other sets there. They're all actually saying the same thing. How do we expect people, our teams, to understand that? So I'm an advocate and pushing very hard internally for us to adopt a single set of IOGP life-saving rules. And you've got the 9 of them on the right-hand side there. They've come out of what? They've come out of an analysis of the past 10 years, fatal accidents and incidents in our industry, exploration and production, of all the operators and their contractors over the last 10 years. And if we followed these golden rules, we would have eliminated, I fortunately can't say all, but almost all of these fatalities. And that's where we want to get to. And so that, for me, is the way forward for us to help the people who are on site, the operators out there every day dealing with these things. And then we start to get, in the bottom left-hand corner here, is where I really want to get to with our organization. We've done a great deal of top-down. Well, I've got super programs coming out my ears that we put in place to help people with safety. We haven't yet, I don't believe, got to the full integrated culture that I'm talking about. You've got the management leadership. I hope you get that from my talk today. I'm not convinced yet we've got the full employee involvement. But that's all about the World Safety Day last week, and it's about the programs we're putting in place around the North Sea. And I said to you I had a super example of how you can achieve everything in one go. And the Netherlands is my example. We had a subsidiary there. It's a very mature subsidiary, old platforms, well into decline. Costs too high. We get to 2015, the gas price comes down, the oil price comes down. What are we going to do with this? We embarked upon a full reorganization, not just of the team, but of the way they work, and how we interact between offshore and onshore, and how we plan work. So it's a full new model of how we operate. And while we implemented that, we achieved the best run of safety statistics in terms of no LTIs for a 3-year period, and no recordable injuries for a 3-year period, and no LTIs for a 1.5 years. You can achieve everything with the right focus in the right area, both from management and the teams right down to the workforce, and you can do it. What we're then doing is saying, okay, I've got everything. I know all the top-down stuff. Now I need to get the bottom-up bit. And I like the comments at the end of a moment ago. We're not talking about, what was the terminology used? Safety anarchy. We're not talking about that at all. What we do want is full involvement and full commitment from our teams that are day-to-day managing safety for us on our offshore installations. And they have good ideas how we can improve our processes, about what's important to them, and how they perceive the things that we think are really super good. And so Patrick and his team here have been putting in place a system that we call Safe Home, Home Safe. And it's all about making sure that we get full involvement and full buy-in from all of our teams such that we can continue those trends and we can ultimately stamp out fatalities in all of Total's operations, not just here, but worldwide. And that's where I would propose I would finish, and just to remind you, because safety is for me, and it's for you, and it's for all of us. Thank you very much.